We have a wonderful webinar lined up today, the University of Vermont Sustainable Entrepreneurship MBA program, and let's get started. So we're very fortunate today to have two terrific speakers. We have Stuart Hart, who is the Stephen Grossman Endowed Chair in Sustainable Business and co-director of the Sustainable Entrepreneurship MBA, which we also call SEMBA, at the University of Vermont. And Stuart is also the S.E. Johnson Chair Emeritus in Sustainable Global Enterprise and Professor Emeritus of Management at Cornell University's Johnson Graduate School of Management, where he co-founded the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise. Professor Hart is an expert on the implications of environment and poverty for business strategy. His article, Beyond Greening, Strategies for a Sustainable World, won the McKinsey Award for Best Article in the Harvard Business Review for 1997. And if his name is familiar to you, you may know that he helped to launch the movement for corporate sustainability back in the mid-90s. We also have with us Vinca Krajewski, and she is an Associate Brand Manager on the personal care team of Seventh Generation, and she's an alumni representative to the Sustainable Entrepreneurship MBA Advisory Board. At Seventh Generation, Vinca manages marketing activation and analysis on baby and feminine care product categories. She received her MBA from the University of Vermont SEMBA program, where she received the Outstanding Graduate Student Award. And prior to that, she worked at the Institute for Sustainable Communities and studied environmental science at Dickinson College. So thank you, Stuart and Vinca, for presenting today. And Stuart, take it away.
Thank you so much. Vinca and I are pleased to be here with all of you. And I guess start with the core premise of the session. The core premise of the session is that the time is now to reinvent business education. And what we'll do is spend a few minutes just talking about why we think that's the case, but then spend the bulk of the time on this new program, what we think of as kind of a business program, MBA program for the 21st century, a clean sheet, sort of disruptive innovation in the business education space. So without further ado, let's get started and begin with a very broad rhetorical question. Maybe a virtual poll. We can't see your hands, but you can imagine that it's a virtual poll. And the question is, what's the likelihood that the next 20 years look like the last 20? How many believe that that's true? You would raise your hand. My hunch is if we could see each other, there probably wouldn't be any hands raised. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be on this webinar. But having said that, it's not like the last 20 years were a smooth ride, right? It was a very bumpy ride, but I think all of us know, and maybe even with recent events, we know that it's going to probably be even bumpier the next 20, and with a lot of surprises embedded in there. And if that's the case, then we need to think also about sustainability in that context. And so we begin with the premise, if we think about the broader context within which all of this kind of innovation is taking place in business education. If the last 20 years were characterized in the business world when it comes to business and sustainability, largely in what we would call strategies for greening or corporate social responsibility, and by this we mean programs and initiatives within companies that incrementally improve on negative impact, right? Whether it's eco-efficiency or pollution prevention, or programs in communities where the businesses operate, to ensure legitimacy, continued right to operate, and that's all good, right? Those strategies are all good, but they're based on continuous improvement. It's incremental gains, as Bill McDonough would say. It's about being less bad, and if you think about the competitive implications, what it really does is rationalize the current industry structure, because large incumbents can improve their performance, become more efficient, reduce costs, reduce risk, and increase legitimacy. So that's all good, especially if you're a large incumbent. That makes a great deal of sense. To me, that characterizes the last 20 years dominantly, right? That's where probably 90% of the effort in business and corporate sustainability was focused. But if that's the last 20 years, I guess our core premise would be the next 20 years would focus more on what we would think of as strategies for sustainable entrepreneurship. And this is a fundamentally different game, right? This is less about continuous improvement of current products and processes and value chains and so forth, and more about introducing and commercializing new inherently clean, regenerative technologies like green chemistry. It's also about creating new markets, serving the underserved, reaching those that have been left out, and that's going to require new and different partners and stakeholders in order to be effective. The competitive characteristics here are less about continuous improvement, more about disruption and discontinuity. We think it's going to be a real bumpy ride. A lot of current players may not be around in another 10, 15 years. So we're talking about not only restructuring current industries, but inventing or reinventing or even inventing entirely new ones. And of course, this is part and parcel to what GC3 is all about. So if we think about the focus, it's really about strategies for sustainable entrepreneurship. Now, in that context, if we think about what does that mean for business education, right? What's the likelihood that current trends continue specifically in business education? Again, I think the signposts are there already. We already begin to see the conventional top 20 MBA programs or top 50 MBA programs are experiencing declining application, declining enrollment. It's not quite where law schools were or are, but it's probably headed that way. I think the signals are pretty strong that and you probably recognize, well, if you're an economist, you'd recognize this guy. But I think we're entering the age for business education as well of creative destruction, as Joseph Schumpeter would have said, the man who coined the term. And that's really the core premise of the SEMBA program, that we believe, kind of looking forward, that if the world is going to be about sustainable entrepreneurship, creative destruction, new technologies, regenerative, clean tech, inclusive business models, then business education ought to be premised on that, ought to focus on it. And the SEMBA program was created to do just that, to focus on a transformation of today's business as well as creating tomorrow's ventures. So it's both entrepreneurship, corporate transformation, as well as entrepreneurship. We began the program with the observation that so much of what goes on in current business schools, and for me personally, I spent time at Michigan, at North Carolina, and at Cornell, starting programs focused on sustainable business, all three places, going back to the early 90s. And I guess the best metaphor that I've been able to come up with is that at most business schools and most MBA programs, sustainability is like a saddlebag. Saddlebag in the sense that it kind of hangs off the side. You have the existing core curriculum, which hasn't really changed very much in 30 years. Yeah, there's some new readings and new cases, but the content is by and large the same, and the structure of it is by and large the same. And business schools and MBA programs then throw a few saddlebags off the side in the form of, an immersion here or an elective course there on sustainability or ethics or purpose or what have you, and then that's it, right? That's as far as it goes. And that may have sufficed for the last 20 years, but again, I think if we look forward, we're going to see more and more reinvention, right? Wholesale reinvention, which is what we've done with the SEMBA program. We've, rather than just throwing on a bigger and bigger saddlebag, we've genetically engineered a new horse, right? That's really the core concept of the program. So the vision for the program is a world where capitalism, disrupted and reinvented, is a force for economic, environmental, and social change necessary to solve the world's most pressing problems. That's kind of the long-term vision. If we're successful, then that's what the world begins to look like, and that's what the capitalist enterprise does. Our mission is to prepare and train individuals, leaders, right, to create profitable and sustainable business opportunities in a world undergoing this kind of transformational change. We want to develop the next generation of leaders who will build, disrupt, innovate, reinvent sustainable business. That's the idea. And our intent is to be recognized as the best sustainable business MBA in the world and provide a tangible model for business education transformed for the 21st century. We're not interested in holding this close. It's completely open, transparent. We want to spread the model. We think the idea is to create a new model and spread it. Right? But at the same time, to be recognized, because that's going to help us grow the program and have greater impact. We're only 3 years old at this point. We're working with it's a 12-month program. We're involved with our third cohort right now, but already we've begun to get some recognition in the form of the Princeton Review's Best Green MBA. We were ranked second in the country last year. We've been recognized in terms of innovation and curriculum by the Page Prize, which is in the sustainability business and sustainability space. That's a pretty well-known prize. We won the grand prize last year because we essentially innovated the entire curriculum, right? Not just one course or a combination of field experience in a course. Outstanding specialty program, with the Global Consortium of Entrepreneurship Centers, and maybe most importantly, just this past year, we were in the top 10 of the Corporate Knights Better World MBA ranking, which is a global ranking of 150 plus MBAs. So, we think we're beginning to get some recognition, some traction, and that's important to be successful. Now, what does the program look like? How did we go about doing this? It's a 12-month program, and in essence, we are an MBA. We give the MBA degree, and it's an accredited, AACSB accredited MBA, and we intend to keep it that way, which means we have to deliver the core content, right? That has to be there, but yet we're doing it in 12 months, and we're adding more. So how do we do the math on that? Well, so we have the core MBA toolkit. It's embedded in our curriculum, right? It's crucial that happen in terms of accounting and finance and economics and so forth. That's all there. But we've done it in a way where we take some of that content, which occupies a lot of time during the initial year of core course in a traditional 2-year MBA, move some of that, out of the actual coursework, make it online, an expectation, a prerequisite before you start some of the really basic things, in finance and accounting and economics and statistics. So we get a head start that way. And then we're able to, since we started with a clean sheet, we've been able to look at the traditional MBA, which has a lot of legacy content in it because most MBA programs have been around a long time. They've accumulated a lot of content that gets taught just because the professors know how to teach it. And it, to change it increases their level of their workload, and they get rewarded for writing journal articles. So it's tough to really make wholesale change in an existing MBA program. I can tell you that as a fact, having experienced that at 3 different universities. But when you start with a clean sheet of paper, you can get around that problem. So we've been able to kind of look in a very focused way on what's in the typical MBA, what's legacy content that we could delete altogether, right, that just no longer applies and is not necessary for accreditation and is not necessary to get us to the future, but what content also could be reduced, could be delivered in a different way, could be de-emphasized. Just as one example, in most traditional MBA programs, there's in the operations core course, there's a long module, at all 3 universities where I taught before. Up to 3 weeks was spent in the operations core course on queuing theory, including manual calculations for factory optimization. Now, do MBAs need to know what queuing theory is? Yes. Do they need to spend 3 weeks doing hand calculations to optimize the line? I don't think so, right? So there are lots of examples of that we've been able, in the design with a clean sheet of paper, just to take out of the program altogether. And that then opens up space, to bring in additional content, new content that's crucial to the future. So sustainability and innovation are embedded in every course. It's embedded in the finance course. It's embedded in the OB course, in the strategy course, in the marketing course, and then we have a lot of entrepreneurship content in the program as well. So all of that functional content is taught from the perspective of sustainability and innovation, sustainable entrepreneurship. Plus, we bring in a lot of new content and a new set of tools, which you'll hear a little bit more about, that are relevant to the future, that are going to be really important in driving innovation for the future, from systems tools to life cycle analysis to, a range of tools that are taught in the form of workshops. And we bring in entrepreneurs, we bring in thought leaders. You'll hear a little bit more about that, and then a very strong focus on practical application through the practicum. And so with that, I want to turn it over to my colleague Vinca, who will say a little bit more about that from her own experience. So Vinca, please.
Sure. Thanks so much, Stuart, and thanks so much to everybody that's on the call. And I'll just say quickly that I went to the GC conference back in June when it was in Burlington, and it was so exciting to be in the room with many of you and kind of see what I've been studying for the past year come to life in so many ways. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to connect GC3 and SEMBA because I think it's a really important part of reaching that collective impact that we're all hoping to gain. So what makes SEMBA different? Professor Hart just went over much of that, but some points of difference really are the fact that we have entrepreneurs in residence throughout the entire year. So we have people who have started ventures in the clean tech, in the sustainability space, come and talk to students for an entire day and really get a chance. Students are able to interact with them and understand how they came up with their venture. And I think this would be a great opportunity for some of you to come in and do that. Also, we have a whole network of mentors. We have students from all kinds of backgrounds who are looking for to work in different areas, and we have mentors that are able to connect with them on that area. We have workshops, and then a big focus is the learning teams throughout the entire process. So about 85% of the work is done in teams, and this is important because we think that sustainability, in order to be successful, you have to understand how to work cross-functionally with people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds. So there's a big focus on feedback and growing as a professional and being more successful. And also the summer practicum. So SEMBA has a real focus on a practicum which is different from the traditional MBA internship where students are normally slotted into more functional roles. And the practicum is to grapple with a sustainable venture that a business is hoping to take on and really wants to make sure that it's sustainable from the ground up when they're developing. So usually we have a team of 2 to 3 students that are working with a company all the way from January to the core time is from May to August, and really thinking through the issue, tackling it, and bringing in the leading thought on how to solve these issues. So quickly, to think about what does this actually look like, we have 4 different modules, and before we even start, we ramp up on our accounting so we can have an idea of, what we need to know on that. And then we go right into our foundations of management. So these are a lot of the core MBA courses that we're going to need in order to build on for the rest of our curriculum. And then thinking about building a sustainable enterprise. So this is all about the entrepreneurial business model, thinking about public policy from a sustainability point, and also how to organize a new business and how to think about change management. And these are some examples of the classes during that module. So one of my favorite classes here was entrepreneurial leadership and mindset. And we really study entrepreneurs and what makes them successful and who they are and how anybody can really be entrepreneurial. Another important piece here is that we have a leadership seminar that goes through the entire curriculum. And so there's a real focus on leadership, teamwork, and professional development that really takes students to the next level and allows them to be successful. So here again, and as you can see, so finance, it's not just finance, it's finance for innovators. So we have a focus on innovation and entrepreneurship, even in our finance course. And so the second half of the year, Module 3, this is about growing that sustainable enterprise that we've started to develop in the first 2. So we're focusing more on the operations and greening the supply chain. We're thinking about leadership and vision. And then Module 4, so here we do some really interesting work on thinking about the base of the pyramid and how to drive innovation in an inclusive manner. Also thinking about green energy, and we do a lot of systems work here. And then we go into the summer practicum, which I'll talk more about in a minute. So here's a couple courses, a few courses from that time period. as well as here. So we are looking at the regulatory issues of entrepreneurship and sustainability, where students are learning all of the current trends and regulations that they need to know in order to start a new business and also to go into an existing business and be a change maker.
And just one quick comment. You probably see over there on the faculty, there's like a VLS and so forth. That I think one of the interesting features of the program is, yes, we have the business school faculty teach a lot of these courses, but it's not only business school faculty. We have faculty from around the university and also the Vermont Law School, people from engineering, community development, applied economics, the Rubenstein School for the Environment, the Gun Institute, and this is all baked into the SEMBA program. And it's the entire thing is a core curriculum, right? I mean, so everyone goes through this program, right? And the opportunity to really step out in a more unique project is the practicum that Vinca will talk about next.
So this is an example of the various companies that SEMBA has worked with on the practicums. So for a program that's only 2.5 years old, it's neat to see that we have a lot of great partnerships, and we'd love to develop some partnerships with companies that are involved in GC3. So the Practicum project that I worked on this summer, I was at 7th Generation, and 7th Generation, as many of you know, right now offers kind of a premium green product, both in the household cleaning and also the personal care space. And so the thought is, how can they diversify their current strategy of serving that consumer and think about serving low-income consumers in an inclusive way? So me and another student were tasked with the idea of coming up with a comprehensive strategy for tackling that issue. Okay.
And all of the practicums have this kind of character, as Vinca was saying earlier, that they would all either be new ventures that are looking to launch a business that has a focus on environmental sustainability and or inclusion, or a corporate initiative, like 7th Generation is more of an entrepreneurial corporate initiative, you know. And so all of the practicums, you know, I think we go out of our way to ensure that we scope practicums that are consistent with the aim of the program, you know, which I think is fairly unique, right? You know, out there in the MBA world. Yeah. In the business school world, and if that gives you a flavor for, you know, the focus, the types of work, the practicums that we're doing, and the aim of the program, it only stands to reason that the back end of the program, right, at its conclusion, when people graduate in 12 months, right, rather than 2 years with a summer internship, there's a bit of a challenge when it comes to what we'll call it, in SEMBA we call it launch rather than placement, because we're looking, people that come out of the program are looking for them to be change agents, right, to be disruptors, to be entrepreneurs, to be entrepreneurs. But of course, one of the challenges is there aren't so many existing job descriptions that have those words in them. So if we go on to the next one, the way we've tried to think about this in terms of SEMBA jobs and careers is to maybe kind of contrast what would be the main focus for the traditional MBA in terms of placement, which we see down there on the lower part, right, of the vertical axis where it says MBA jobs. This is a little bit of a, you know, overgeneralization, but I think it makes the point that most MBA programs focus on, you know, jobs that are more focused around functional execution, be it in marketing or in finance or supply chain or in mainstream management consulting or in investment banking and so forth. I mean, that's where the bread and butter is. You know, that's where the mass market in jobs is. But SEMBA, of course, you know, has more of a focus on change maker, you know, being a change maker. And if we think about the organizational life cycle, you know, think about startups, think about established firms that are delivering on a strategy that already exists. And then, of course, there are businesses and companies that are declining, whether they know it or not, right? And it would require some form of reinvention. With SEMBA, you know, we're very sharply focused on entrepreneurs, right, and the skills for business model innovation, tech innovation, clean tech, inclusive business, the knowledge, tools, mindset, ethic, and skills to be in that space, either to start your own company or to be involved in a startup. And the investing therein, right? So I guess the buzzword these days is impact investing, but that's an important component here as well. And SEMBA, we have people on our advisory board, and you'll see in a little bit later, our network includes more and more in the sustainable finance area. And then maybe out at the other end, kind of the skills on being an entrepreneur and a change agent within existing companies, especially those that are in need of a strategy remake, right? Kind of on the declining end of the spectrum, or where there's a desire for wholesale transformation to shift the portfolio in a fundamental way. So either entrepreneurial ventures like 7th Gen, with the affordability venture, or wholesale transformation, whether it's PepsiCo shifting their entire portfolio into a nutrition portfolio from sugary beverages. That's really our focus, right, in SEMBA, and the consulting to support that, the transformational consulting to support that. But we also understand that unless the program delivers the conventional skill set around functional execution, then we're not, we're dreamers, it's not real. So there has to be that kind of both feet on the ground in marketing, finance, operation, and consulting, which most traditional MBA programs are primarily focused on. And for us, it's, how do we hit the sweet spot, right there in the middle? That's really the name of the game. And that means if we're going to be successful, we have to build a very different looking back end. We call it the launch. It's not a traditional career office or placement service where you bring a bunch of corporate recruiters to campus for just these mainstream functional execution jobs. That's not us, right? But yet, many of our graduates start in a function, right, with the expectation that they bring this skill set. And I'd say Vinca is a good example of that, right? Here at 7th Gen. So if we're gonna create this sort of innovative back end to promote change makers out there in the world, then one way to do that is to build an advisory board, right? That is populated with those organizations and those people who mirror that, right, and who would create some pull for the kind of thing we're doing. And here's just an example of some of the organizations that are currently involved on our advisory board. And then we've reached out beyond just the board to create something we call a change maker network, which is working through the board and our other contacts and having, almost like snowball, right, having our advisors think about who are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other specific individuals and organizations that personally kind of share this vision and would be willing to get involved, right, with the SEMBA program, that would be willing to be a part of the support system, that would have access to this talent pool, would get a first look at our graduates, but that also are willing maybe take a call from our students that would provide some in-reach to their organization or referral to others, where what it is this program is all about, and if you know of opportunities, then this is the best way to do it. That SEMBA is really about creating a rich, dense network that opens up these kind of opportunities for our students. Where at a more conventional MBA program, 98% of the focus is on corporate recruiters and placement in existing jobs, and maybe 2% is a focus on trying to do this with the so-called impact students. They might have one person in the career office that's assigned to try to take care of the impact students, and we know that doesn't work so well. With SEMBA, we have, just like with the curriculum, we have the unique opportunity to start over again and build a back end, build a launch system that's unique in the world. And that's what we're trying to do, and that takes some time and energy. And then I think one of the other challenges with a 12-month program is you don't have a summer internship and then a whole second year where students in a traditional MBA program are taking courses, have the privilege of paying another year's worth of tuition while they're looking for a job, right? I mean, that's the way the conventional 2-year MBA program is structured. We're a 12-month program, super intensive, 9 months of coursework, as Vinca showed you, and then a 3-month full-time in-venture in-company practicum, and then you graduate, right? So one of the things we've tried to do is to build relationships with ventures and with companies to develop what we call postgraduate consulting projects, that it could extend the practicum work on a paid basis, but still allow that now graduate to look around a bit while they're working on a project, gaining experience. You get a look at that student in a paid capacity. Maybe you want to make an offer to them 4, 5, 6 months down the line, but still buys them some time, right? So this is a way of kind of softening the blow of 12 months and then you're done, and now what do you do? You know, we need to create this part of the, you know, kind of creative back end, the launch process, where there's mutual value in doing this. And, you know, we're looking to build out, you know, a career counseling and, you know, sort of the career counseling necessary for people to get a quicker start on this early in the 12-month program. So this is all very much a work in progress, you know, but we think with SEMBA that if you add all these elements together, right, the kind of the SEMBA value proposition, there's this intensive 12-month program, you know, it's AACSB accredited, and we intend to keep it that way. It's only 1 year, 12 months of opportunity costs versus 2 years or longer, right? And if you're in a, you know, a evening program or something like that. But in terms of full-time programs, just 12 months. We've priced this thing. I think this is one of the other interesting aspects of the program. You know, we believe one of the reasons that conventional MBA programs maybe are starting to decline is that the price tag has become so outrageous that it's hard to afford it anymore. And the only way you afford 2 years not working with no income and then racking up, you know, massive debt, you know, student loans to pay for a 2-year program, something that begins to look like $130,000 or $140,000 or more in tuition over those 2 years. As the only way that works is to land a super high-paying job at the end, and increasingly that's how conventional MBA programs get measured. You know, how much money their graduates make. Don't get me wrong, we're not opposed to making money, but at the same time, our program, it's a 12-month commitment, not 2 years, and we've made the strategic choice to price the program in a way that, as far as we know, we're the most affordable MBA program, AACSB accredited MBA program in the country. The cost of the program all in for tuition is less than $50,000, right? So compare that to the typical program, which is in excess of $130,000. So you graduate with a car loan, you know, a nice car, but not a home mortgage, right? I think that's the difference. And then you add in the postgraduate consulting program, the Changemaker Network, and this kind of unique opportunity ecosystem network that we're creating that really leverages people into this space, you know, in what we think of as launch. And we think this is kind of a unique value proposition, you know, where we're also walking the talk at the same time. You know, we're teaching about inclusion and environmental sustainability and how we can construct businesses around it. And so we felt like our program had to reflect that as well in terms of affordability. And so we've done our best to try to do that and have this be a walk the talk deal as well. So I think we can probably stop there, take some questions, but a couple of thoughts about how GC3 companies can get involved. Hey, you know, as Vinca suggested, let's do a practicum, right? I mean, some of you could probably think about a practicum project where you could engage with us on that, have 2 or 3 students get involved for next year. Sponsor a postgraduate consulting project for one of our graduates. Maybe there's something specific where you could use a little boost in terms of horsepower, especially when it comes to this unique combination of people that understand business, but also the world of sustainability and how to leverage it. Hire our grads, right? I mean, we're going to have a bunch of people coming up and graduating in this coming August. They're looking right now. So if you would have interest in you know, people that have this, again, this kind of unique combination of skills and experience, let us know. Be an entrepreneur in residence. You know, as Vinca was saying, we bring a variety of people in from corporations, from ventures, from the NGO world, from multilaterals, from the investment community, to spend a day with our students. You know, entrepreneur in residence sounds like a, you know, our entrepreneur in residence program is essentially come have dinner with the faculty and the dean and then spend a day with our students. You know, talk about your personal journey and a particularly interesting challenge in the sustainable business space that you're working on. That's the program. So be an entrepreneur in residence. Join our Changemaker Network. If you would like to get involved, this is a pretty low investment way to do it, right? Kind of join our network, be willing to maybe take a call from one or more of our students to provide some suggestions or in-reach, and then you also can get a look at our students, you know, early on, kind of first look. send a high potential employee from your company or your venture or from your organization to get into our program, right? To get a SEMBA degree. I think one of the unique aspects of it and it's by design, since it's a 12-month program, it actually lends itself, and we've begun to give some thought to this and try to make this happen with some partners. It lends itself to a corporate sabbatical model where, for a larger company that wants to retain high potential young people, maybe you give a leave of absence of 9 months, because that's what it is, 9 months of coursework. And then the practicum can actually be done back in your company, right? The practicum could be designed in a way that it's going to advance an initiative in your own company, and your employee then can finish the degree by doing a practicum that's directly relevant to your company. So we think of that as kind of like a corporate sabbatical, whether you help them pay for it or not, right? I mean, you depending on your resources and ability level to do that, but by all means to be thinking about prospective students that might be interested in this program. So with that, we'll stop. You see both Vinca and my contact information there, as well as my colleague David Jones, who's the co-director of the program, and the SEMBA program coordinator Susan Denton. So Monica will stop there, and maybe there's time for some questions.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Vinca, for a very good presentation. I'm impressed with all the work you've done over a relatively short period of time. So kudos to you. And so let me get it going with some questions that I have. Well, first of all, I have to chuckle a little bit because when you were talking about the conventional MBA curriculum and mentioned operations classes and queuing theory, I had to laugh a little bit because, full disclosure, my husband is an operations research, operations management professor at a business school, but that's fine. But so, my question to you is, as you were developing the curriculum and you approached some of the business school professors at the university and talked to them about what you were trying to achieve, what kind of reception did you get from them, and how did those discussions evolve to where you are now with the curriculum?
Yeah, so I think this is, and I'll be perfectly honest here and describe, because I think that's an important question. So you've already indicated that prior to coming to University of Vermont, I'd spent time at Michigan and UNC and Cornell in those business schools, trying to build programs focused on sustainable business, and was successful in creating saddlebags. One of the reasons why I think most top 20 or top 50 MBA programs continue to be saddlebags is because of the question you ask, right? That it's very difficult to get people to kind of refocus on what might constitute a new approach and invest time and energy in reinventing for a couple of reasons. One, they're all busy. They have active research programs. Teaching at a lot of the top 20 schools is important, but not the most important thing. And plus, where you have larger functional groups, to come in and say that they should maybe rethink, it's not a matter of just putting a new title on their existing course syllabus. They would typically walk the other way, right? And that I would say that was my experience at those three places. There are always going to be 2 or 3 or 4 faculty who want to get involved, but it ends up being in the form of a center, in the form of a saddlebag with a few elective courses. But then the horse keeps running on as it always did. At Vermont, what made it so interesting, and I guess one of the reasons why I'm really excited is, let's be honest. I'm not saying anything that isn't already known. The University of Vermont Business School, 4 years ago, was not a particularly highly regarded business school. It was not ranked, right? It was not really known for anything. It had a pretty good undergraduate business program, but not a lot of resources. The faculty were mostly teachers. There wasn't a lot of research, a lot of thought leadership going on. But when a new dean came in, our new dean is a guy named Sanjay Sharma, And this wouldn't be happening without the leadership of Dean Sharma, right? That I should say that, right? This just didn't drop from the sky. It takes a dean who kind of shares this vision, who has passion to see something like this happen, and who will open up the possibility for it to happen. And the way he did that was to take the existing MBA program. There was an MBA program already at the University of Vermont Business School when Sanjay came as the dean 5 years ago or 6 years ago, but it was purely local. It catered to, you know, kind of an evening audience of what was then IBM, you know, and was not really known outside of Burlington, right? It was, and then it was shrinking in size, as I was describing earlier, to the point where it was losing money. So Sanjay came in and saw that that was happening, and it wasn't difficult then for him to just abolish the program, right? Now, imagine abolishing the MBA program at Cornell or Michigan or Stanford or Harvard, or so. It's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. It's really at a place like Vermont that has the features of a, you know, it's in a community, in a state where there's a lot of emphasis and focus on sustainability. It's a tier 1 research university that has a lot of world-class programs, especially things like Gund Institute and Rubenstein School and others are very well known around the world. But the business school was maybe a bit under-leveraged, right? So it's an opportunity to be a disruptor, right? In a Clay Christensen sense of the term. You start at a school like Vermont that maybe doesn't have the top 20 ranking, so it doesn't have a lot to lose, right? It's certainly, you know, the MBA program was not a cash cow. So by abolishing the existing program and then challenging the faculty to think about the prospect of a new one, it really got the faculty excited. They could see that this could actually go somewhere, that this could improve the school, that this could bring resources to the school, that this could free up their time to do other things. So we've been able to build, I think, a pretty robust faculty team across all the functions who are really interested and engaged in SEMBA. I mean, Vinca can speak to that, but to me, that's been one of the distinguishing features, is that just the nature of this dynamic of starting. You know, I think it's in places like Vermont where we can reinvent the MBA. It's going to be hard to do that at established places because of the power of incumbency and the inertia that exists.
And because of that, I'll just add, SEMBA's been able to bring in really great faculty that weren't at the business school before, like yourself, like our entrepreneurship professor, yep, finance professor, who are really interested in helping students understand.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that if you compare the size, resources, and faculty of the business school 5 years ago when Sanjay came to what it looks like today, it's like night and day, right? So Sanjay's already been able to bring significant new resources. The school was named, it's the Grossman School of Business now, so we received, because of Sanjay's leadership, the largest single gift in the history of the University of Vermont to the school. So we're now the Grossman School of Business. There are I hold a Stephen Grossman Endowed Chair. There are other endowed chairs. We have a Grossman Professor of Entrepreneurship. There have been several new hires, probably 8 or 9 new hires off a base of 40 faculty just in the last 5 years. Others, you know, who are closer to retirement have gone emeritus. So it's been a substantial shift in the faculty portfolio, and pretty much all of the new faculty that have been hired have this interest. So we're able to kind of develop a pretty sharp focus on this. The undergraduate program, the 3 spires of the undergraduate business program, also are global, sustainable, and entrepreneurial.
Great, that's helpful. I think that really helps to paint a picture of what's been going on for the past few years as you've developed the program. It sounds like a real turnaround story, and it sounds like a very exciting place to be. So thank you for that. So let me ask you, what can you tell us about the students that tend to apply to the program? Are they, you know, traditional MBA candidates? Do they have a different kind of flavor? Are they typically students that have been out of school at the undergraduate level for a while working? And if so, what kind of work experience have they had?
Yep. So the average age of the students in the program is around 30. But we have quite a range, right? So that you know, our bias is not to admit people that are fresh out of college, but it's not a rule, right? So we have, the last couple of years, admitted a couple of people each of people straight from undergrad that had particularly distinctive backgrounds. And we're discovering also, maybe not discovering, it probably is somewhat obvious, that it would tend to be the younger students who would have a real fire in their belly to start a company, right? That, somebody in their 30s, maybe some have young families and kids, might be less inclined at that point to take the risk on a new company versus making their way into an existing company, right? So that's the intrapreneurship aspect. And we want both, right? We want to build both bridges. So we have, students ranging all the way from 23 years old when they start to well into their 40s. Students in their 40s that come that are kind of making career shifts, that are making career moves. But I'd say what unites all the students is a passion to use the power of business, entrepreneurship, and enterprise to make the world a better place. I mean, that really is the underlying. Every single student that's admitted, we're pretty careful, because David Jones and I, as the co-directors, we're also the admissions committee. So we're pretty careful when it comes to who we admit to the program, that they all share that passion. We do attract, and we actually work pretty hard at trying to reach out and make the program known to and recruit students who may not have been thinking about business school, right? That at places like the Idealist Grad Fair and that sort of thing. People who are idealists in the sense of what they want to do is to have purpose and have impact, but maybe they were thinking law school, right? Or social work, or public health, or what have you. But when they come to realize that there's a business school, that an MBA program could have this focus, it changes their mind, that there's a leverage point in the world of business and entrepreneurship. So we do bring students that have that background, that come from, they weren't maybe even thinking about business school. But then we also have those students who, they absolutely were focused on going to business school, getting an MBA. They've looked at other programs. They've looked at some of the mainstream programs, even the ones that I've been involved in, as well as some of the other well-known ones. Be they, Berkeley Haas, or Duke Fuqua, or MIT or Harvard or Yale's program, or we could go on and on, the Oregon program, or even I mean there's a growing list of those, and they've in many cases applied to those programs and maybe even have been accepted to some of those schools and have chosen to come to our program over them because of the qualities and characteristics of our program versus those, because those programs are saddlebag programs. They're 2-year commitments where you take the traditional core, and then in the second year you're able to take a few elective classes, maybe do a project.
Yeah, okay, good. And here's another question. So, recognizing that the program is still young and evolving and not, in any kind of steady state situation, but, for now, what kinds of companies are coming to recruit students from SEMBA? And, based on your experience, Stuart, how does this mix differ from sort of the traditional companies that are recruiting MBAs from more traditional MBA programs?
Well, it's as I said earlier on, we've been looking to try to build a career development and launch process that really departs from the traditional, kind of placement office at a business school. So we're only now getting, we're not opposed to corporate recruiting, right? Not opposed to that at all. It's just that we want to bring, if there are existing jobs and people and recruiters can come, we would want those jobs we would want them to be coming to SEMBA because of the kind of the ethic, skill set, and knowledge that our graduates have in coming into those jobs. And I want maybe you get Vinca to talk to this one a little bit, because I think that's exactly what happened with 7th Gen, right? I mean, if you think about it. Yeah, sure. So maybe you could say a few words about that.
Yeah, so a little bit about kind of how I've used the degree now that I'm at 7th generation.
Yeah, because you're in the marketing organization, right? Which I guess, if you just look at it on the surface, it looks like, wow, they just hired her in a marketing job.
Right. So yeah, as I talked about, I did the practicum, and then this job came up in marketing, and I realized I thought it would be a great fit, because even though it is more of a functional role in marketing and on the brand team, I'm still involved in a lot of different sustainability aspects of the company, which has been great. And something that was really exciting for me is that, so my first day at 7th Gen, we were actually acquired by Unilever, which was an interesting first day. And then later that week, Paul Pullman, the CEO, came and talked to the company. And he was talking all about the Sustainable Development Goals. He works with the UN, and he was talking about sustainability and water resources. And I was sitting there and I was like, this is everything that I just studied at SEMBA. You know, we really dug into those Sustainable Development Goals. We thought about how companies can be involved in them. And here he is talking about that. I felt like I could have, I mean, I was still intimidated, but I felt like if I had to, I could have, you know, had a conversation with him about that, which was exciting. And I was able to have conversations about those issues with my colleagues, some of them who hadn't heard about, you know, Sustainable Development Goals. Another interesting thing happened was, in my first couple months, we had an innovation 2-day intensive where we were put into teams at 7th Generation, and we had to come up with new innovations that we were going to be putting into the market. And that was, I was able to pull on so many of the things I had learned at SEMBA, bringing that into that space. And then also, you know, in my day-to-day, yeah, I'm working on analysis, I'm working on different marketing tactics, but I'm also thinking about how to bring sustainability into those kind of everyday functions of marketing and branding, because what 7th Generation has is it has a lot of brand equity around sustainability, around people trusting the brand. So the only way to really keep that and keep this company that I love, you know, doing this great work is to be on the cutting edge and moving the company forward in new ways in this space.
Yeah, so I think, Monica, where we want to head with, you know, kind of building out this, what we would think of as kind of new launch platform for the business school of the future, is to, you know, we've started by trying to build up the network, the advisory board, the Changemaker network, which is composed of people and organizations and companies that have some significant commitment, right, to this, like 7th Gen, right, that at least have some significant initiative going on inside a larger company, and to have direct contact with people who are champions and change agents themselves. But now we're at the point where they're being helpful in referring us back to their HR organizations, and to connect up with their HR organizations to begin to connect to jobs that might look more like recruiters, you know, coming to campus. But it takes time, you know, to get to that point where the program has to be kind of established enough, have enough of a reputation, attract, like doing a practicum with a company or having them come in as an entrepreneur in residence. They, you know, they develop a comfort level so that, and an understanding so that they go to the HR organization, make that connection, and then the HR person understands, you know, who these graduates are, what skills they have, how they're built, and how they might really compete well for a specific job in marketing or in supply chain or in finance or whatever it might be within a company. So we're on the path to building out that launch platform, but it takes some time to get there.
Yeah, that's fair. No, that's great. So that's a great way. The practicum sounds like a great way for companies to get to know the program, the curriculum, the students that are going through the program. So, you know, I just want to make a plug for anybody on the call now to get in touch with Stuart. If you even have kind of an inkling of an idea for a project that you might want to propose to Stuart, I'm sure Stuart can kind of socialize it with you and come up with something good that would be, you know, productive for both the MBA program and for your company. So please do reach out to Stuart if you think you have something.
Absolutely. And if you know, if you have a look at our website, you know, just Google UVM SEMBA and it'll come up. There's a tab that has descriptions of all the practicum projects, so it can give you a flavor for 7th Gen was one of 10 that we did last year.
Great. Okay, good. All right, good. Well, I want to thank you, Stuart and Vinca, for a great presentation. I thought the Q&A really helped bring out some of the texture of the program and what you're trying to achieve, and to better understand, Vinca, you know, how you're taking your education and putting it to good work at 7th Generation. So that's terrific. So once again, thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Vinca, for a very interesting presentation. We wish you good luck as you build this important and clearly impactful program. And I know we'll be in touch to see how the GC3 can continue to support you. So thank you, and have a good day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.